Joining me right now in this Sunday Morning Futures exclusive is the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, who has been leading the charge to protect America's border since the Biden administration unwound President Trump's border security. The governor joins me now with the latest on Biden's border order. Governor, great to see you this morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you, Maria.
Can you give us an update? Have you seen any change at the border since Joe Biden came out with an executive order?
None whatsoever. Listen, people need to understand that what Biden has done, he's not doing anything to actually secure the border. In fact, it's the opposite, because he's actually authorizing more people to cross the border illegally. And think about this, when you get to that 2,500 number of people crossing the border a day that he says he will allow, but only then stop the asylum process. When he stops the asylum process, there's nothing that Biden is doing that actually is preventing anybody else from crossing the border. There's no type of enforcement mechanism in place. And so as long as the Biden administration refuses to provide any type of enforcement, any type of blockage of people crossing illegally, all that this new Biden policy is going to do is to actually attract and invite even more people to cross the border illegally. And you've seen on videos ever since the Biden order went into place, there's no slowing down of people crossing the border. In fact, it's just accelerating. And so this is gaslighting our fellow Americans when Biden gets up and says this is going to stop people from coming across the border, when he says it's going to secure the border. In fact, it is making the border illegal crossings worse.
Unbelievable. And the fact that he does it 5 months before an election to try to make people believe that he's actually doing something after 3 years of he and Mayorkas saying that the border was secure is also stunning. But I want to get your take on this specific issue over unaccompanied minors, unaccompanied children. When I went to the border several times, 5 or 6 times at the border, I saw several unaccompanied children there coming across the Rio Grande alone, 11-year-olds. I mean, the drug cartels, I was told, were renting those kids, making believe that they were part of family units, but they really weren't. What do you think the implication of is not having unaccompanied children, part of this 2,500 cap?
So a couple of things. One is that the unaccompanied children is just one of very many exceptions to the new rule that Biden has established. The point is this, and that is the exceptions exceed the rule, and that allows, again, even more people to cross illegally into our country that the Biden administration is now going to process and to allow to stay into the United States. But second, as you point out, by allowing children to cross the border illegally and allowing them to stay here, all that does is provide a tool to the cartels who are responsible for everybody who crosses illegally to exploit those children. This is extraordinarily harmful to these children, and they oftentimes are used as tools, meaning this, and that is they will cross the border with some adult, and then they will be sent back across the border into Mexico and accompany some other adults to come across the border. So this is nothing more than a scam that endangers children, that does nothing to secure our border.
Yeah, and where are all the Democrats who claim that they are watching out for human rights abuses? I mean, where are all the Democrats who claim to love children and women when we're looking at this kind of treatment? That is just outrageous. Governor, you've got a list from the Texas Department of Public Safety, the 10 most wanted criminal illegal immigrants. I've got the list in front of me. Tell me the significance of this list and what the Texas DPS is running into when they are doing these apprehensions.
So, Maria, included among all the people that Joe Biden is allowing into the United States are known criminals, people who are wanted for murder, for rape, for assault, very serious crimes. And when they come here, the Texas Department of Public Safety taps into a database to find out which of those are in the state of Texas, which of those they have been able to apprehend, which they've not been able to apprehend. And now we have a list of people who are in Texas who have committed crimes in the past, who are wanted. And we thought, well, we're going to, if Joe Biden is going to allow criminal illegal immigrants into our state, we are going to go after those criminal illegal immigrants. And that's exactly what the Texas Department of Public Safety is doing.
That is just incredible. What do you want to see at the border should President Trump win this election in November? Obviously, we've got new polls coming up to take a look at what people are talking about after the conviction. But what are you expecting should President Trump win at the border?
Well, listen, I've talked to the president about that, and he's in part going to re-implement the policies that he had in place when Joe Biden took office, and that is remain in Mexico, maybe some derivative of the Title 42 policy. Importantly, end, catch, and release, continue to build the border wall. But something else is very important. Remember that Joe Biden has allowed in more than 10 million illegal immigrants, including these very dangerous criminals. One thing that President Trump is very adamant about, and that is, at a minimum, we need to identify, locate, and apprehend all of these criminals that have come across our border and send them back to where they came from.
Yeah, President Trump told me he would likely have to deport most of them. Governor, before you go, real quick on the Texas Stock Exchange, we know that the environment for business has been quite positive, and that's why so many businesses are incorporating in Texas. Now, the state planning on a Texas Stock Exchange to compete with the New York Stock Exchange.
Sure. Listen, for the entirety of the century that we're in right now, Texas has become the epicenter for the American economy. We rank #1 for new jobs added, #1 for economic development new projects for 11 years. We have Fortune 500 companies flocking to the state of Texas, including their headquarters, and CEOs have said that Texas is the best state for doing business for 20 years. And so with Texas, we are now the epicenter in the United States for capital, and now we seek to expand that by becoming the epicenter for capital markets.
All right, well, we'll be watching. You're doing it all, Governor. It's good to see you this morning. Thanks so much, sir.